Welcome to the CMO Spotlight, and I'm here with Amy Martin Ziegenfuss, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Carnival Cruise Line. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So excited to have this conversation with you. So I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit more about Carnival Cruise Line. Obviously many consumers know this brand really well, but I'm not sure if they all know about the company and size and scope and scale and all that kind of good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting because a lot of people get introduced to cruising through Carnival. So you're 100% right. Carnival Cruise Line is really known as America's cruise line because we carry more Americans and we serve more U.S. home ports than any other line, which is an interesting factoid.
Wow.
But also because we provide really fun and memorable vacations at a great value. We're basically known as the fun ships, and we're known for that as for a good reason. So I'm really fortunate to be the CMO for Carnival.
So, how many people-ish travel on a Carnival cruise in a year, or how many ships do you have? Or like, give us a little bit of
Yeah,
scale of the organization.
Gail. Yeah. So we've got currently 25 ships and two more coming. So we'll be at 27
Wow.
next year. Yeah. So we're really big. And to be fair, we do have a couple in Australia. So we're not just in America. And we do sail in other ports of call around the world as well. So in Europe and lots of other places too. So Asia, etc. And we travel, I think it's between 5 and 6 million guests a year. So it's a lot of people. And we have hundreds of thousands of team members out there helping to make these vacations so special.
Wow. And to speak to making vacations so special, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to making a wonderful cruise experience, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. But certainly, I know that there's a ton of great people that are focused on trying to make the best possible experience for your guests.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I mean, you have everything from, and I'm still learning a lot of this. This is my fourth month in the
True,
role,
yeah.
very new, but you have everyone from our amazing maritime officers and experts who obviously who make sure everything is safe and secure and navigate the globe via the seas. And then you have the incredible teams shoreside and shipboard who are making sure everything runs really smoothly. If you can imagine, I mean, it's a massive amount of work to feed and house that many people, and to do it week in, week out. Some of the cruises turn around within 3 or 4 days. Some are out at sea for 7 or 8 days or even more, and then they turn around in a few hours. So it's really incredible when you think about the ship coming back to port, getting all the people off, getting all the people on, and all the stuff right off and on as well. So it's really incredible.
Wow. Well, and it sounds like you may have had to learn a brand new set of lingo for this gig in 4 months. Granted, your career has been the bulk of it has been travel hospitality, but shoreside and what is it, shipside and shoreside. I mean, you're learning some
Yeah.
new lingo as well.
New lingo for sure. Yeah. Shipboard and shoreside. Yes, that's right.
Shipboard,
Yes.
shoreside. Thank you.
And the one big thing I was told was do not call them boats because they are ships. I think
Right,
it was a good tip.
right. Boats are small, ships are huge. Right,
That's
right.
right.
So I'm curious about your role as chief marketing officer. What does that entail? And tell us a little bit about your team.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, I'm very, like I said, very fortunate and lucky to have joined the team as CMO, really leading our efforts to continue marketing this amazing brand, and really focusing on growing our customer base over time. So that's really great challenge to have. So the team is responsible for all of our brand marketing. Everything from working out how the brand is positioned, and all of the offering and how we go to market, to our advertising and our paid media, as well as of course social media, and getting people into our own channel ecosystem, and supporting of course the amazing teams who run our loyalty program and recognize our most loyal members. And I will tell you that Carnival has some of the most incredible fans I have ever seen in my many years in marketing. They really do love the brand. They live the brand, and I mean, they come on board and they decorate their doors, which is not I will be fair. To be fair, it's not completely just for Carnival. A lot of cruisers do that. It's a thing. But when you see the creativity and the joy that they bring to it, it's really incredible. So it's a really beloved brand, and so it's really a pleasure to get to market it.
That's awesome. Well, it's fun to work on a brand that is devoted to fun. Like the
Yes,
experience is fun. That's cool. I love that. So I know I mentioned that you'd spent a really good chunk of your career in travel and hospitality. I know you spent about 7 years at Hilton prior to joining Carnival, and then I think 8 years at Choice Hotels before that. So I'm curious if you could just tell us a little bit about your career journey. I think you maybe started at agency when you first got out of
I
school
did.
too.
I did start in an agency. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I started out, I sort of stumbled into marketing is what I would say. um, and an agency was a great place to learn, more about it. And that really sort of got me hooked. I was fascinated by the role brands play in people's lives and consumer behavior and motivations and all that kind of stuff. And so I actually went and got an MBA because I hadn't studied business and I didn't really understand how marketing fit into the business mix. So for me, I needed that grounding. So when I finished that, I had sort of a succession of marketing roles that were in healthcare and a little bit in financial services that sort of eventually led me into hospitality. And the first role there was Choice Hotels, which I actually spent 11 years all in with
Oh,
Choice,
wow.
but it was between the states, and I was also based in London for a while for them leading their European marketing. So that's why it was kind of chopped up, but really
Wow.
interesting. Yeah,
Very cool.
and then I came back to do some other work for Choice, and then Hilton lured me over, and I spent 7 years at Hilton, as you said, and that was a fantastic time to be there. We grew from, I can't remember, I think there were, I want to say 13 brands when I joined, and when I left, it was more like 19. So,
Wow.
and there've been some that were percolating that have launched since then. So, yeah, so it was really interesting and fun to do that marketing. I really got hooked on the travel, the travel space. It's a fun space to market because people really love to travel, and
Hmm.
so it's really fun to understand, what does travel do for them, and how can these brands be part of that journey?
I love that. And I am interested a little bit in the fact that you probably at Carnival, 100% of the travel is for pleasure, whereas probably in the hotel space, you had some business travel and some for pleasure too, right?
Yes, that's a very good distinction. That's right. And
Hmm.
particularly at Hilton, it was heavily business travel sort of focused, and that mix was heavily leaning business travel. Now that shifted a bit during the pandemic and the post-pandemic,
Yeah.
I think. There's always going to be an element of business travel, of course, in the hotel space. To your point, for cruising, it's heavily leisure,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, there's a little bit of you might have some corporate group travel here and
Yeah.
there, but yeah, it's heavily leisure, which is really great, honestly, because
Mhm.
it's, again, people are coming on vacation, so they are geared to have a good time, right? Which is a nice mindset to have.
Absolutely. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you either wish you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe you would give to somebody who's just starting out in a marketing career.
Yeah, I think I would say to myself back then
Yeah.
that you really have to take ownership of your career path. No one is going to do that for you. I think, and I see it now in sometimes in more employees who are coming up, that I think, and I thought this, I think I thought someone will tell me, you should be doing this next, and I'm going to make you a manager. And now, and I didn't realize that actually you have to work out what your career goals are, make a
Mhm.
plan for how you get there, and then figure out who can help you get there, right? Find people you look up to and who are in the role you'd like to have someday, and ask them to mentor you or to give you advice. I think if I'd known that, I probably would have been on the path maybe a little bit sooner.
Right. Well, that's a really great point, which is sort of you've got to be your biggest advocate for your career because nobody's going to give you the path. You're going to have to find your own path. I love that. So I believe that everybody has a superpower, and I'm curious what you feel maybe your superpower is, or maybe what some people have told you your superpower is.
Relationship builder.
Mm.
People have told me that that's my superpower. So, and I think they're right in that if I had to pick one, that's probably what I'd pick. Especially across a complex or matrix organization with a lot of stakeholders, with a lot of, people to influence and get on board with what you're doing. And also, even if you think about the relationship you have with customers as a marketer, I think you really have to think about that as a relationship and about building that relationship. And it can't be one way. It has to be two-way, right? There's always, you have to understand the motivations,
Yeah.
right? And what people need, what they're looking for, what they're working to achieve. And that goes for whether it's within your company or with the people you're marketing to. And that really helps you find common ground. And critically in marketing, it helps you find the sweet spot of what your brand brings to the table that your customers might want.
Hmm. So I want to shift gears to leadership a little bit. I'm curious if there are specific values that you either want to demonstrate to your team, or maybe that you would even demand from people to be part of your team.
Good question. I don't know about demand, but I definitely look for,
Maybe not demand, but you're looking
I
for
like that.
people with these values because you
Right.
think that they're important. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I think I look for things like empathy,
Mm.
um, for the reason that I just stated, being able to put yourself in the customer's shoes and in other people's shoes. And then also, because I think it creates an environment where people can thrive. So I think, that's something that I look for and that I try to live up to as well. I look for a sense of humor because I
Mm.
think it's really important. That we can all laugh together and that we don't take ourselves too seriously. And we often say in advertising and marketing, it's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery. No one's going to die at the end of the day, hopefully, because of marketing. So we need to keep that balance, I think, for sure. And then I think authenticity. And again, this is something that I really try to show up as an authentic leader, being vulnerable, letting the team know I don't have all the answers, so that it creates a safe space for them too. One thing that I've found is that being open about myself being part of the LGBTQ plus community and talking openly about my wife has really had a profound impact on helping my teams
Mm.
feel they can bring their whole selves to work. And that's a powerful thing. And I want to make a safe space for everybody.
I love that. I think to your point, also COVID helped with this process for us because we all got insights into each other's homes and we saw each other's pets and spouses and
That's right.
whatever, and we all had to kind of find our own balance, and so that also kind of helped us humanize each other, I think, a little bit more, even though we were humanizing each other through a little box on a screen. But that's awesome. I love that.
That's right.
Um, Okay, so I'm curious, maybe you outside of work, where do you find inspiration for either yourself or for the team?
Well, within work, the team inspires me every day, and the team that I walked into at Carnival is a great example of that. I've had amazing teams before, and I'm lucky enough to have another one. And their diverse perspectives,
Hmm.
creativity, their passion really keeps me super energized and engaged. I think outside of work, I find inspiration. I read a lot, not just business stuff, but things that give my brain a break and engage it in other ways. So I think that's important. And I try and have, you know, different kinds of experiences as well, because that keeps you, I think, fresh and, pushes you to not kind of get too stuck in your ways. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that I look for outside of work.
Great. So here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers, and that often means that we are connecting clients or marketers with agencies that can support them and fill gaps. And so we're not on the client side squarely. We're not an agency. We sort of live in that space between. And so we think a lot about that agency client dynamic. And so I'm just curious in general, either at Carnival now or even in your previous lives, how do you like to work with marketing agencies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think of them as critical partners and extensions of our team, in how we're thinking about the brand, really, and our business. It really is, they bring something to the table that, generally speaking, we don't have internally. And so it's really our job to ensure they're fully sort of briefed and invested in our business and really understand our challenges and what we're trying to achieve. And that enables them to bring the best solutions to bear. And like I said earlier, it's important that we treat it as a two-way relationship so that everybody feels valued. And frankly, selfishly, that we get the A team who wants to work on our business, right? And that's how you do that, not by demanding the A team, but by making it worth their while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. It's one thing that's probably exciting about some of the great companies and brands that you've worked for is that Carnival is an exciting client for a lot of agencies to work on, and even your past employers were too.
Yep.
Where you can be a significant client for them and get the A team, but I like the way you phrased it, which is how do you get the best work is not by demanding the A team, but showing that you're worthy of the A team, kind of thing. I like
That's
that.
exactly right. You want them to want to work on your business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. And you can't do that by being a crappy client.
Right. Well, and so I'm curious, in terms of the kinds of disciplines or functions that you generally like to keep in-house because you think they're maybe core to the business, and are there certain other functions that you generally would like to get outside perspective because you feel, hey, I can benefit from having, expertise? Usually it's either a capacity reason why you'd bring agency support in, or a capability issue where they're just really good at something that your team isn't always so good at.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, it's a great one to think about. I personally believe we should never outsource our marketing strategy. How the brand and our products should be positioned, who our customers of today and tomorrow are, what our go-to-market strategy is. However, agencies can be fantastic thought partners in developing those things, right, and building those strategies. I think that can be amazing. I think it can help you to unsilo your thinking and think outside your category, right? Because they're thinking about things, across categories, and you tend to be a little blinkered. So I do think, it can be a great marriage. But in terms of where agencies really come into their own, I think is when they bring their expertise and creativity in developing kind of breakthrough ideas in the advertising and media spaces, in some of the brand extension spaces potentially. I think those things are hard to build out internally. Again, because you're thinking about one thing all the time, right? So I think that's where I would look at, and that's where I typically look at bringing them in as partners. And then internal agencies, I think, are also integral in bringing the brand to market and in partnering with those agencies, because they're really, the guardians of the brand, and they understand the ecosystem, the full ecosystem,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That an external partner could never understand, right? Like I think about my team today, my internal agency today, and I mean, they know every nook and cranny of the ships and where all the marketing messages have to show up and the signage, and it's just, that's an incredible knowledge base that you couldn't ever transfer, I think, externally. But the partnership with an external agency on how to keep that messaging fresh and think about it could be a beautiful harmony.
Well, that's great. And it sounds, from everything that I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you clearly treat your agencies as an extension of your team and as partners, and not a vendor that's just providing you with some services or something. It's really a relationship.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen it done both ways, and I've seen the results.
Right.
Plus,
right.
You know how you'd like to be treated, don't you? I mean, it's kind of common sense too. So
I love that, Amy. All right. So a couple other questions, then we'll jump into some fun ones just to wrap things up. So first is, as marketers, we often are working with people that are the non-marketing functions in the organization, who maybe all think that they're marketers, or at least want to be involved in marketing, but don't always fully understand our marketing world. So I'm curious, how do you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions of the organization?
Yeah, well, I think, it's such a good question. Everybody's a consumer, right? So everybody has a point of view. So I think in terms of demonstrating the value, I think it's about demonstrating how marketing drives incremental business, and relying on a robust mix of metrics and data to help us do that. And then also how marketing can drive long-term growth for the brand. I think those two things are critical for us to demonstrate. And then I think in terms of, making sure people are bought into and understand the approach you're taking, the messaging you're using, the advertising you're creating. I think it's about helping them understand the consumer and your target and what's working with them and what's not, and really kind of helping to storytell that, because otherwise you get people saying, well, I like that or I don't like that,
Right,
right?
right.
And that's just not helpful because
Everybody's a focus group of one at that point. Yeah.
exactly. And that focus group of one may or may not be your customer target. Like we
Right.
had that a lot at, I won't name where, but in my past lives where, they were frankly not the target. They would never
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that category. They made way too much money. And
Right.
and they were evaluating, the advertising and marketing. And so you have to recenter them on, listen, here's the target and here's what they think.
Right. 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 I love that. Well, going back to the empathy piece, like having true empathy for your consumer and sharing that empathy with the non-marketing functions of the
Yes.
organization to say, you're not the target audience. Here's
Right.
what they're facing and thinking and feeling. And so we've got to market to them, not to you.
That's right.
It's a good way
That's
to
right.
do it. So I'm curious, since you've only been at Carnival for, 4 or 5 months, it may be in a past life. I'm curious if there's a specific campaign or program that taught you a great deal, either because it was a big flop and you learned a lesson that you needed to learn, or it was really successful and you'd like to emulate that success sometime in the future.
Yeah, I probably can't pull that from Carnival yet, but
Yeah.
there are definitely lots. As I was thinking about, things like that in my career, there are lots of good examples and there are lots of flops. But I think I'll point to one, which was a brand I helped create at Hilton, called Motto by Hilton. We discovered through our global segmentation, customer segmentation, that there was a segment of next gen travelers who traveled and stayed in hotels previously with their parents, but they're now starting to travel on their own. So their first jobs, first adult vacations, those kinds of things. And they didn't think hotels were for them. They were staying in home sharing. And so we were intrigued by this, and we uncovered some insights into why they thought that. And it was all about accessibility and value. So being in the hippest part of town, not in the touristic part of town. So, think Flatiron, not Times Square.
Right,
And
right,
and being affordable. It had to be, something accessible and affordable for them, and being able to stay with friends. Because that's kind of how they wanted to travel. So
right.
we created Motto, which is in the hippest part of town. It has smaller rooms, which we learned they were fine to trade that off, but
Yeah.
they're flexible. So they have like Murphy beds and bunk beds, and they all interconnect. So you can stay with a posse and, open up the doors and do what you need to do. It has a really cool day to night coffee and cocktail bar, and it's more affordable. And, what that taught me was to look for the white space and then listen to the customer, because you might uncover a big opportunity that you had no idea was even there. I don't think we would have had that on our radar at all if we hadn't taken a step back and said, what are we missing here? So I think that was a valuable lesson for me as a marketer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you can bring that with you to Carnival Cruise Line to say, like, what's the white space here? Are we appealing to is there a different traveler that we didn't consider that might want to be on our ships? Or is there some
Exactly.
experience that we're not providing that we should provide or something? That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite
All right.
interesting.
So we're gonna wrap things up with a couple of kind of rapid fire fun questions that have nothing to do with marketing necessarily. The first is, I'm curious if there's a quote or a book or a band or a sports team or a movie that really inspires you, and what is it about that thing that inspires you most?
Hard to pin down one, but I thought about a quote I love, which is, "We rise by lifting others."
Mm,
It's a Robert Ingersoll, who was an abolitionist and a supporter of women's suffrage back in the 1800s. You probably know that. And I think for me, I think earlier on in my career, I thought I had to compete,
mm,
with those coming up with me, and even as a woman, thinking like there aren't that many women,
right.
in senior roles. I'm going to have to fight against my peers. And I know now there's a way to make space for everyone. And actually, it's on me to help make space for those who don't have a seat at the table, who are either coming up with me or coming up behind me.
I love that. I love that. It's a great quote too. So, outside of your family, where do you find joy in work? Do you have hobbies or passion projects?
I do. I love cooking with my friends and family and also
Mhm.
for them.
Mhm.
I love traveling. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear
You
that.
should, yeah.
I love it. And my wife and I do a lot of it. We do a lot of it with friends and again with family. Cruising, I have done a little bit of it. I'm going to be doing a lot more now. So
Yeah.
that's fun. And then we have a 7-month-old puppy called Archie, who
Wow.
definitely is bringing us lots of joy,
What
which is
what kind of is Archie of mixed breeds or is
he's
Archie a
not.
split?
He is a purebred. He's the smallest of the Swiss mountain dogs. They're called Entlebuch. So they're not massive. They're like 60. They'll be like 60 pounds. He'll be like 60
This
pounds.
might be a first. We might have to put a photo of an of that breed of dog in the show notes or something.
Nobody knows him. I know. No one knows the breed. It's very funny. Even the vet was like, "What breed is this?" And
That's
so then they
funny.
found them in the
Cool.
system.
Very cool. All right. Well, two other quick ones. One is there a brand that you haven't worked on that you really admire, and what is it that you admire about the brand?
Yes, I have a couple of these too. But if I think about one from a branding standpoint, I've always admired Mastercard and
Oh,
their
wow.
their priceless platform. That platform has been around 25 plus years and probably longer. I don't even know. So it's really stood the test of time. And if you think about it, I think it's so genius because it was a way to rise above the functional benefits of a credit card, right? Into this emotional space about priceless moments, which, I think was, again, just genius. And they found ways to keep it fresh over time and to extend it.
Mm,
It's not just about the consumer message, it's also their employee platform, and it's about their ESG commitments. So they talk about creating priceless opportunities for small businesses, for
mm.
people from diverse backgrounds. So it's a really powerful platform, and I really admire them for not just building it but sticking to it.
That's awesome. Well, and it's cool when you can think about a brand like MasterCard that's so ubiquitous, but also the ubiquity might make it forgettable. And in
Right.
this case, it's not.
That's right. That's very well said. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, you're not getting the MasterCard, from it's just on the card from, the card is from the bank, right? So it's really
Yeah.
smart that they found a way to make their brand stand out.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, and so last thing, just for fun, I'm curious if there's a fictional story or a realm or something that you would like to live in if we weren't in 2023 United States of America, where would you be?
Yeah, so this one, all my friends know this, so I thought I would share it. It's not fictional, it's historical. So I would love to go back in time for a period to the court of Eleanor of Aquitaine. She lived in the 11th century or the 12th century, the 1100s. She was an incredible female leader at a time when, of course, women were not part of the leadership equation at all. She became the Queen of France and then Queen of England. She ruled on behalf of her husband and some of her sons, and she actually went on crusade to the Middle East at a time when women just didn't do that. So I just
Wow.
think she's really inspiring that she sort of broke the mold, for women back in those days.
Did you say she went on a cruise?
On a crusade,
I got it.
like a cruise.
I mean, that's amazing. In
I mean, I'm sure she
1100s.
went by ship part of the way, so it was
Right.
probably kind of
She
a
was one of
cruise.
the early cruisers, and
I
and now
love
here
that.
you are, all these centuries later,
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. She can be my cruise muse.
cruise muse. I love it. We invented something new here today, Amy. Fantastic. So, anyway, Amy Martin Ziegenfuss is the Chief Marketing Officer of Carnival Cruise Line. Amy, this has been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
It's been really fun. Thank you so much for having me on.